Well, some more Springbok news. I can't see the chat very well because I'm on my mobile again, so apologies for that. But some more Springbok news. A lot of people took exception to the appearance of South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa on the stage. Probably less so that he was there as a head of state, probably more so that he seemed to be trying to hog all the glory from the achievements of the Springboks. And I can't dispute that. A fantastic opinion editorial piece appeared in News 24 today talking about that subject specifically, also referencing a couple other writers. And I'm going to read some of this text from this op-ed, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And I'm also going to comment. First off, look, I mean, heads of state will always glom onto sports personalities and sports utilities. It is a tradition in the United States for the NCAA champion who finishes first to visit the White House, for the NBA champion, for the NFL champion, for Major League Baseball champion to visit the White House. That's been a tradition forever. So it's not unusual for heads of state to rock up when teams celebrate. But I think a lot of people took exception because Cyril Ramaphosa was kind of awkward. And wait till I read you the comments that are from Peter du Toit from News 24. This is an absolutely brilliant op-ed. I'm not going to read all of it to you, but I'm going to read some of it to you and offer my comments and also some commentary from folks abroad who had some very enlightening things to say about this as well. So let me just go ahead and start with this. Peter du Toit in News 24 in today's paper. So we're still talking about the World Cup a week after it happened. This is awesome. I hope we're talking about it a month from now, and I hope people keep discovering our content. Peter du Toit in News 24 says, in his post-match interviews, of which there were what seemed like hundreds, Siya Kolisi was proud but magnanimous in triumph. He always acknowledged the vanquished, and every single time proceeded to explain what drove the team. South Africa, he told interviewers, is a country going through a lot, and things aren't going well back home. That frank statement from Siya Kolisi, bordering on entering into the political realm, which is something I usually frown upon for political actors to do. I mean, obviously, I've criticized Colin Kaepernick's nonsense many, many times, mostly because Colin Kaepernick is a liar and a fraud, and what he says is factually incorrect. That's why I criticize his movement into politics. But Siya Kolisi is just simply stating the truth, and he's doing it from a platform that he has. And so I'm not really criticizing Siya. I think he's done something good for South Africa. Time and again, as he did in 2019, Kolisi spoke of giving hope to people who are unemployed, who don't have food to eat, or those who are victims of violence and crime. Kolisi's interviews provided a damning analysis of South Africa in 2023. Indeed, they do. Siya Kolisi has a platform and a voice that I can only hope to have to reach people around the world about the horrors that are unfolding in South Africa. And you'll notice that Siya Kolisi does this without regard to race, creed, faith, gender, simply South Africans, because it's all South Africans who are suffering through the negligence and malfeasance, as well as what's the word I want to use here? The the malicious governance of the African National Congress, the incompetence of it. Peter du Toit continues saying his eloquence in explaining what the title defense meant to the team and the country was a theme that was picked up on by a few British writers. Absolutely. Among them, Jonathan Liew, who had the following to say in The Guardian. Now, remember, The Guardian, I've said many times, a leftist publication, but nonetheless is very balanced when it comes to rugby reporting, despite what they do politically. So if you read it for politics, you're going to get one-sided view. But if you read the rugby, it's pretty balanced. Jonathan Liew said, there are times when South Africa's rugby team can feel illusory, but persuasively like the only thing really holding together this divided country, with its 12 official languages and infinite planes of ethnicity and history and privilege, with its endemic instability and its useless politicians. Well said. Useless politicians. I can't argue with that. South Africa's useless politicians. Now, his colleague, also at The Guardian, this is Andy Bull, added this a day afterwards. He said, and because they were led by Kolisi, who understands and expresses the ties between team, people, and country better than almost any player ever has, South Africa always had the best answer to that one question. Why? Wow. Nicely said there, Andy Bull. Well said. Now, this is where Peter du Toit's commentary gets a bit cutting against Cyril Ramaphosa, and I think it's justified. You're ready for this, folks? Okay. Once again, I'm reading from News 24 op-ed article from Peter du Toit in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa couldn't wait to get his hand on the trophy, awkwardly inserting himself among the players during the trophy presentation Saturday evening. His preening social media teams at the presidency and the ANC were breathless with excitement, declaring Ramaphosa as the only president to have lifted the trophy twice. What on earth does that even mean? Are they honestly correlating the Springbok success with Ramaphosa's presidency? And I think Du Toit asked a very good question here. What exactly does that mean? The only president to lift the trophy twice. That's just ludicrous. It's just political propaganda. It's political use of something that should not be used in that fashion. Du Toit goes on to say it's utterly embarrassing, cringeworthy even. A beaming head of state swooping in, wearing a rugby jersey to attach himself and his government to Khaleesi and his crew. The contrast between sporting excellence and governance failure on Saturday night was glaring. Was Ramaphosa and Fikile Mbalula and other ANC luminaries that flew to Paris not embarrassed by Khaleesi telling the world that this country is in a perilous state? No, they're not. Peter, of course, we know the answer. They're not embarrassed. These communists don't care. They would rather see South Africa destroyed than for it to succeed. They don't care about racial harmony and the rainbow nation. They don't care about free market capitalism and respect for property rights. They don't care about individual liberties and freedom of worship or freedom of speech. They care about totalitarian fascist control for the elites, and that's what it's all about. To answer your question, Peter. Did it not bother them that one of South Africa's most recognizable figures on a global stage told millions of people that the team needs to give hope because South Africa continues to limp on? Were they not ashamed listening to Khaleesi talking about South Africa's ANC-induced problems? No, they're not. They're not. They don't care. And it's time for South Africans to wake up to that fact. Whether you're black, brown, white, Christian, Jew, Muslim, it doesn't matter. Wake up, South Africa. As we say in German, wach auf, wach auf. Because the South Africa of 2023 is not beset by natural disasters, see, these are ANC problems. Natural disasters aren't the reason for South Africa's decline. It isn't threatened by war. There's no war on its doorstep. Nor is it the victim of global economic crisis, despite the lies of Ramaphosa, who harkened back on Saturday, or on Sunday. On Sunday, when he did a State of the Nation, not really State of the Nation, when he addressed the nation, we all thought it was to celebrate the Springboks victory, but no, it was a campaign propaganda address to the nation. He complained about the 2008 financial crisis being the reason the ANC has failed. Ladies and gentlemen, it was 15 years ago. Human beings don't live for thousands of years. At some point, you have to be an adult and take responsibility for your failures and stop blaming it on George W. Bush, Barack Obama. Honestly. And everything, of course, is blamed on the Rona. But the Rona collapse in South Africa is self-induced. Virtually no one had it in South Africa, and yet they shut the country down and destroyed the economy. So let me read this paragraph again without interruption this time. Because the South Africa of 2023 is not beset by natural disasters, it isn't threatened by war, nor is it the victim of a global economic crisis. It is, however, beset by governance disasters, threatened by crime and corruption, and is the victim of economic mismanagement. And I would add to that list, Peter Du Toit, and you shied away from this, and maybe it's not your view, but it's certainly my view, and it's accurate, by race hustling, by racism and racial distortion of society by the political elites, the media elites in South Africa. Now, if we compare this to when South Africa won the previous 3 World Cups, there were political figures who stepped on the stage, famously, iconically, of course, Matt Damon with a movie called Invictus. We famously see when President Nelson Mandela, when Madiba steps up with Francois Pienaar, the team captain, in 1995 with the trophy. But this was the dawn of a new South Africa, or so we thought. A new racially harmonized, free market, capital-based, individual liberty South Africa, which has not turned out to be the case. So it's understandable that Mandela stepped up because it was the significance of that moment, and people accepted that. That wasn't political. It was political act, but it was not meant to favor the ANC for a re-election campaign. It was meant to favor South Africa for reconciliation and harmony, and it was brilliant. In 2007, Thabo Mbeki joined team captain John Smith on the stage in Paris, right there in the same place, in 2007, to lift the trophy again. However, this time, South Africa was actually growing about 6.8% annually GDP, and it was making progress and moving forward. So there's a good celebration there. They were making progress, reducing unemployment and improving economic growth. In 2019, Now, you'll see the banner for this broadcast. It has a picture of Ramaphosa in 2019 in Yokohama and a picture of Ramaphosa in 2023 in Paris. In 2019, a lot of South Africans were just thrilled to death that Jacob Zuma was gone and the so-called era of state capture was over. Although, as we've seen, it hasn't been. Look at the PPE theft. Look at the rampant theft that's gone on under the ANC, under Ramaphosa's president. It's as bad or worse than it was under the so-called state capture era. So people were just excited then. But now Ramaphosa steps up and awkwardly grabs his mitts onto the trophy, trying to steal the limelight from a team that succeeded against all odds. Now, you might say, that's crazy, Chris. How did the Springboks succeed against all odds? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was the defending World Cup team. That's true. It is a team that had amongst the best talent in the world and best coaching. So how is it against all odds? Well, they had the most difficult path ever to a Rugby World Cup title in any World Cup since the inception of the William Webb Ellis Trophy in 1987 in New Zealand. No one has faced as tough a path as South Africa faced in this World Cup. In the pool stage, they start off with Scotland. Then they've got to play Ireland. Then they get to the knockout stage. They play against the host France, arguably the best team they've ever fielded. Then they play against England, admittedly a team that struggled a bit, but had performed well in this World Cup and did what it needed to do to get where it was at in the semifinal. And had South Africa's number until the 65th minute of the game, when the Springboks' dominance off the bench with the bomb squad began to become apparent, and they surged ahead after Archie Snyman's try. And then the conversion at the end by Henri Pollard, and they win the game. And then they had to beat the mighty All Blacks in the final. No one's ever faced anything like this. And on top of this, the best hooker in the world, and we're not talking about, a Rodeo Drive in Hollywood. We're talking about a rugby hooker, not that kind of hooker, folks. The best hooker in the world, Malcolm Marx, is injured and goes out in this World Cup. So they fall back on a very good hooker, but a guy who has a habit of, not always winning his lineouts, and that's Bongi Mbonambi. Bongi Mbonambi does a brilliant job. And in the final, Bongi Mbonambi is taken out on what many people are calling a dirty tackle. Let's just say it was an unfortunate tackle at a minimum. He's injured and he goes out of the game on what was just a yellow card, not a red card, to Shannon Frizzell. And so we don't even have a purpose-built hooker. We're relying on Deon Fourie, who played hooker years ago, to fill in. And he did an admirable job. His lineouts weren't great, but it wasn't entirely his fault. The lineouts were also a problem because Etzebeth didn't get high enough in the air, Dutoy didn't get high enough in the air, and quite frankly, Mario Itoje was brilliant in the lineouts, poaching them from South Africa. So not entirely Deon's fault, but man, what a Tasmanian devil on the pitch. 21 tackles, only topped by Pieter-Steph du Toit with 28. People aren't even talking about Deon Fourie coming in at 2 minutes and 27 seconds in a high-pressure Rugby World Cup final in which he's a utility player, he's not a purpose-built hooker. He comes in, he's been playing number 6, he's been playing other positions on the field, he comes in at the number 2 position. Now, he did play a little bit in the build-up during the pool phase because they expected this might happen. And he not only fills the gap, he excels. 21 tackles, he's all over the place, made some incredible stops, brilliant in the scrum, and Deon Fourie. So against all odds, we beat France by a point, we beat England by a point, and we beat the All Blacks by a point to win the World Cup. That is against all odds, ladies and gentlemen. So Peter du Toit's commentary about Cyril Ramaphosa, I think, is spot on. 100%. It's right on the money. Now, before I pick on Ramaphosa too much, which he deserves, Pala, which he definitely deserves, it is normal for politicians, as I said, to do this sort of thing, to jump into the fray, to be part of this nonsense. Not the nonsense of winning, but trying to get some of the shine for their political party or for their administration. But in the situation with South Africa, some humility from the portly Pala man would have been in order here. Some humility, not jumping up on the stage, awkwardly trying to push players away to be in the front of the photograph. What an egotistical, maniacal little turd he has to be for that. This photograph is taken millions of times in press conferences, at speeches, on television. And he has to steal the moment from the Springboks, who earned this without any help from the government of South Africa. These super fans that South Africa pays to give free trips up there at taxpayer expense, enjoying their lives, does nothing for the Springboks. It does nothing for South Africa. It does nothing for poor South Africans whose children have starved to death in Nelson Mandela Bay because the African National Congress returned 61 million rand of resources back to the government. It was unseemly, and I'll read that again. It was unbelievably unseemly. This is a brilliant paragraph from Peter du Toit. Where's that paragraph at here? There's two of them here that has really good stuff. President Ramaphosa couldn't wait to get his hand on the trophy, awkwardly inserting himself among the players during the trophy presentation Saturday evening. His preening social media teams at the presidency and in the African National Congress were breathless with excitement, declaring that Ramaphosa was the only president to have lifted the trophy twice, as if he had any role whatsoever in it, as if the ANC had any role. In fact, politicians have been quite the opposite. What have we seen since that happened? We've seen the EFF speak in Parliament. You know, the guys from the Venda Bank, the VBS scandal. Remember that? Yeah. So they speak up in Parliament talking about how the team is white. It's not South African. They're going to take it back. Injecting the racial hatred into this scenario. That's the EFF, not the ANC. What on earth does it even mean that Ramaphosa's lifted the trophy twice, other than he's been in office for far too long? Are they honestly correlating the Springbok success with Ramaphosa's presidency? Well, they can try, but people aren't that stupid. It's crass, it's unseemly, it's unsightly, and it's shameful. Shameful conduct by politicians. Now, my bias against the African National Congress is pretty clear. I gave them a fair chance to improve South Africa for a long time. And it's pretty obvious that their interest is not South Africans. It's in communist, totalitarian, fascist control over South Africans and over the means of control so that they can profit, get fame, be wealthy, have blue light escorts, and live in posh apartments in Cape Town and in Pretoria. It's not about the people. If it was about the people, then we wouldn't see a go-go living in Rietvlei, south of Zeerust, in an informal settlement that 30 years after the end of apartheid still doesn't have a paved road. 30 years, mind you. 30 years. 30 years. Doesn't have pipe water. Doesn't have formal electricity. What has been done about that? Not a damn thing by the ruling party, which has ruled unbroken in Northwest Province since 1994. And this other paragraph from Peter du Toit. Because the South Africa 2023 is not beset by natural disasters, never mind the mass flooding we had in KZN, that should have been resolved. I mean, we just saw the Inkatha Freedom Party call for the resignation of the ANC mayor of eThekwini, Durban, because they returned 1.2 billion in disaster relief money back to the national government. Why? Why isn't it being spent to do recovery and fix bridges and roads, which are a disaster? I was just in Durban. What a mess. Or Dirtbin, as many of us now call it. Not beset by natural disasters, isn't threatened by war. The ghoulish conflict in Cabo Delgado is on the borders of Tanzania, not South Africa. It's nowhere near South Africa. There is no conflict for South Africa to deal with. Nor is it the victim of a global economic crisis, which Cyril Ramaphosa claims always. One lie after another from the ANC. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, quite clearly, remember, vaccine apartheid, vaccine apartheid, vaccine apartheid. What a crock that was. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know this, and many people don't know this because the media doesn't cover it, but it's freely available information. And it was reported in South African press, but never focused on. Aspen Pharmacare, a South African pharmaceutical company that produces generic drugs, among other things, was given the formula. I think it was for Moderna. I'm not sure if it was Moderna or the other one. But given the formula, the code on how to make vaccine against the Rona. And then on top of that, they were shipped the equipment, the centrifuges, and all the equipment to make it free of charge by the manufacturer to South Africa. And as if that wasn't enough, Aspen Pharmacare was given $711 million by the United States government and the European Union. Not to the government of South Africa, but to a private entity. They were given $711 million. Why? To manufacture jabs for all of Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not aware of a single jab against Rona ever produced by Aspen Pharmacare for any African, let alone South Africans. But Cyril Ramaphosa, with a straight face, lies to the world and talks vaccine apartheid when he has an indigenous, domestic pharmaceutical industry that can make vaccines, that did no research, that did no work, then took $750 million and grifted. Where's the money at Aspen Pharmacare? What did you do with it? What about the Chinese South African national who is a billionaire that lives in the States that funded a vaccine factory in South Africa, the Western Cape? Not a single dose was produced. But Cyril Ramaphosa breathlessly tells the world it's vaccine apartheid. He blames the 2008 financial crisis for South Africa's ineptitude and its overspending and its misuse of funds, its theft, its rampant theft of funds, its patronage machine, its destruction of state-owned enterprises. It has nothing to do with 2008. Nothing to do with it. The high-risk mortgage market, which was less than 3% of loans in America, and the ensuing financial crisis as a consequence of my government interfering in the free market and distorting outcomes, leading to a near collapse of the global financial system, is not the reason South Africa is in the trouble now. They're in the trouble now because they're stupid macroeconomic decisions, which oftentimes look as if they're intended solely to destroy the country and make everyone poor so the elites can live lovely. Yeah, anyway, back to the rugby, folks. You know, it's a shame because the Springboks were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It was incredible. I don't know what you think of it, but I enjoyed it immensely. South Africa's triumph is something for the ages. And as Sia Khaleesi rightly says, it's something that South Africans needed. It really matters. It really does matter. But you should have to rely on the success of a national rugby side to be happy, content, and safe in your hearth and your home. You should be able to rely on society's fluidity, society's functioning, society's ability to exist. Of course, all of that has been greatly harmed by previous governance under the National Party during the apartheid era, which represented a fraction of South Africa's population. And today, by an African National Congress that is rapacious, that is a patronage puppy, that steals and pilfers at every turn. South Africans have a choice in 2024. You can sit at home and whine and complain about how things are, or you can pick your bum up, you can go to the polling station, you can pull that lever, you can make that mark for anyone that's not the African National Congress or the economic freedom fighters, whose only ideas are to steal and destroy the country and turn it into a socialist misery machine. Anyway, but the Springboks, I can't wait for the next test match. That's going to be too far off in the future, but we're going to have test matches coming up, and I look forward to it. Overhead, got a jet passing by. That thing is loud. It's an unusual flight pattern. They usually go over this side. But a beautiful day here on the East Coast of the United States, in the mid-Atlantic states, central Pennsylvania. You can see it's fall, and the leaves are changing and falling behind me. Soon I won't have those beautiful little red leaves in the bush behind me, and I won't be able to have this lovely broadcast from here. But it is, of course, summer in South Africa, and it can be brutal. We saw that at the first weekend of URC action when the heat was intense. My goodness. Well, it sounds like missiles flying through the air. But it is a jet, of course. It altered the flight pattern, I guess. Anyway, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I do appreciate it. But I thought it was important to read that op-ed from Peter du Toit. There's been a lot of talk about Ramaphosa's unseemly grab for the trophy. There's also been a lot of talk about Jordy Barrett supposedly dissing Ramaphosa, and then some people defending it. You know what? If Jordy Barrett dissed Sir Ramaphosa, I got no problem with that. Why is Ramaphosa on the stage? The only person who should have been up there should have been Emmanuel Macron and maybe the head of South African rugby, but certainly not the president of the republic. It wasn't held in South Africa. I think that was a courtesy extended to him that was unnecessary. He shouldn't have been on that stage. It should have been Macron because it's in France. But remember, this World Cup was supposed to be in South Africa. Can you imagine that? The 2023 World Cup in South Africa, where 80 people murdered every day, where there's no electricity. And there aren't enough planes to fly everybody around because South African Airways is a ghost. You've got FlySAF Air, you've got Airlink, but you don't have enough planes to fly everybody around for a World Cup. Imagine having 300,000 to 500,000 foreign visitors come to your country over 6 weeks to go to the World Cup, only to find out that there's no way to get from Joburg to Durban because all the planes are full. And it's a 9-hour drive. Only to be carjacked or attacked in Van Riemen's Pass. I don't mean to laugh, folks, but let's be honest here. This would have not gone so well for South Africa. What the government would have done is diverted all their attention in the security sector to focus on this security cluster, and everything else would have gone to crap. People would have been murdered on farms, people would have been murdered in hostels and townships, and it would have been largely ignored, kind of like it is every day. Anyway, But the Springboks, the South Africa was supposed to have this World Cup, but they didn't get it. They were the top bid according to World Rugby's own analysis. And then Ireland was number 2. Quite frankly, I would have really, truly enjoyed going to Ireland for a month. Man, I wouldn't have had to drive very much from place to place. I could have enjoyed myself, had some Guinness, and relaxed in a pub, enjoyed all of Ireland. I've been to Ireland many times, but it would have been pretty cool. Spent a lot of time in Ireland. It might have been challenging when it came for hotels, but because it's not a big country, but it would have been cool. But France definitely had the juice to host this thing and the geographic spread, which was challenging. Anyway, folks, I really don't know what to tell you about Cyril Ramaphosa other than he's a politician, and that's what politicians do. They try to steal other people's glory and take credit. I mean, look at how many American presidents try to take credit for the price of gasoline. They try to take credit for the unemployment rate. You see presidents endlessly claim that they created jobs. They don't create jobs. The only way you create a job is if you hire people in the executive branch of the federal government. That's not creating jobs. That's stealing money from the private sector and handing patronage out to people to do things so the government can control you. That's not growing an economy. You grow an economy by removing barriers and reducing artificial barriers to people's ability to develop companies, businesses, and success. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's what matters. Unfortunately, presidents rarely do that. We had one that recently was president who did exactly that, removing 10,000 pages of unnecessary federal regulations, which were crippling business entrepreneurialism and business success, as well as profitability. And we've gone the opposite direction now in the past couple of years. And that's the same in South Africa. They now have the Employment Equity Act, which will take effect next year and will affect the private sector in the most disgusting and vile abuse of government authority that we've seen in decades, as they determine who can have a job based on their skin color in the private sector. Bad enough when you see that in government work, but when you see it in the private sector, it's beyond the pale. And if you have questions about that, or you're curious about that coming into effect, because it is coming into effect, and most people are ignoring this, go back and watch my broadcast, my interview a couple days ago, well, actually yesterday, not a couple days ago, yesterday, with Gabriel Kraus from the Institute for Race Relations. We talk about that subject in particular. And I think you'll find some interesting information there, maybe learn a little bit about what's happening in South Africa, even for you South Africans who are kind of not really keeping your eye on the ball with this. But anyway, once again, Cyril Ramaphosa is trying to steal the glory. That's what politicians do, folks. That's what politicians do. So I can't criticize him for being clever enough that, but it was cringeworthy. And that's a good word that Peter Deswell used. It was cringeworthy watching him try to sidle up there and grab a hold of that trophy as if he had something to do with it. The Springboks have succeeded in spite of the ANC. The Springboks have succeeded in spite of the South African Rugby Union, in my view. They've succeeded because they have a good brain trust, and they were fortunate enough to have the brain trust, and they have picked the right talent to get across the line. Not necessarily the best talent, but the right talent. We saw players who weren't there. Thomas du Toit wasn't on the pitch, certainly worthy of being there. Evan Roos, certainly worthy of being there, not on the pitch. But they have to pick a team, and the good news for South Africa is it is blessed with lots of talented rugby international players, and they can go a long way. But a lot of these players we aren't going to see anymore, folks, in international competition. This probably marks the end of a number of players' time. Maybe Faf de Klerk is done at scrum half in the international level. We're likely going to see, well, we know Duane Vermeulen is done. He's finished his last international test. He goes out a 2-time World Cup winner back-to-back. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So congratulations to Duane Vermeulen. A number of other players. Will we see Pieter-Steph du Toit, who was an absolute monster and snubbed for the Dream On team? I don't call it the Dream Team. I call it the World Rugby Dream On team. But he was snubbed for that, and we'll see. I think he'll be 35 or something like that for the next World Cup. It's not unheard of, but that's a long way to go as you get older in rugby to see if he'll be there. Of course, we saw people come back. Victor Matfield famously came back from retirement to compete in the 2015 World Cup, and he was brilliant. So we may not see Pieter-Steph du Toit in the next one, and there's an open question about whether we'll see Siya Kolisi, who's also in his 30s now. Kolisi says he's going to keep playing, but can he keep it at that level? We'll see. And one can only hope that the players we've grown to admire and love continue to participate on the pitch for the Springboks as they go forward. Hopefully they will. We will see. To the commentators who respond on this video, feel free to leave a post behind if you're an adult, if you're a nasty, hate-wanking troll. Footsec. Yeah, it's funny. People post comments. It's some people don't read any of them. People say just ignore them, but some people just deserve to be responded to, even if they're looking for attention. You know, it's I did a video for Wayne Barnes. That one's done very well. Thank you for those who watched it. The Wayne Barnes retirement video, in which I talked about Nigel Owens pointing out the abuse that officials are getting from social media, how toxic it is. And I had people actually write, and they're like, if you don't like social media, then just turn off your phone. You kind of missed the point there, Rocco. It isn't about feelings being hurt because it's posted on social media. It's about the harm, the genuine harm that stuff does. And if you don't think it does genuine harm, then you don't understand what's going on. Cobus Reinach received death threats with photos of his child over social media. Wayne Barnes received death threats over social media, and people verbally saying that in the stadium, apparently, in the Stade de France, according to his wife. Turning off your phone doesn't stop that behavior. It doesn't stop the danger to your family. It doesn't stop the risk to your life or reputation when people steal your content, alter it, and lie about you, and then mislead people. And then people are wont to believe whatever they want. So to the commenters that put down, just turn your phone off, why don't you just shut up? Because you don't know what you're talking about. Having worked in law enforcement, I know exactly the hazard and danger posed by this sort of conduct by slimy people online. And it needs to be addressed. And as Nigel Owens says, people need to be held accountable for this stuff. It's long past the time that that should happen. We've just seen the idiotic emotional responses of man-children on social media. It's crazy. And it doesn't matter the platform. Anyway, it's one thing to criticize a public figure. It's quite another to go after a rugby official or go after a player, even though they're public figures. But, you know, threatening them or endangering them or acting with malice is not acceptable. It's never acceptable. 63 likes here on this video, folks. 79 of you currently here. Can somebody smash that like button? Give us a little more love there. I really appreciate that. It's always nice to see people enjoying what you're putting on. But anyway, so I normally do a news broadcast at this time on a Saturday. Is that Fiona there? I think Fiona's there. Welcome, Fiona. I normally do a news broadcast at this time, but today I thought this was an important enough story to do. And quite frankly, I got to be honest with you, I'm enjoying these, I don't want to call them fireside chats. I don't have a chimney out here and a fireplace. There's no braai pit, but I am sitting on my porch outside. It is fall, and it's warm enough that I can sit out here wearing this 2007 World Champions Rugby polo. And you see this one's old. It's got 99 2007 on there, all stitched in nice stuff. I've had this one obviously for a long time. I want one of these that has all four on it. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But anyway, folks, I want to thank you all for your patronage, for those who watch this. And leave your thoughts behind. What do you think? What do you think about Cyril Ramaphosa? Was he just doing what politicians do? That's one response. Was he trying to electioneer? That's another response. Or was he just a selfish little prick who stuck his business in everyone else's and tried to grab a trophy that he had nothing to do with? If you vote for the latter one, you'll probably get a lot of people who agree with you. Anyway, whatever the case is, Ramaphosa and Fikile Mbalula and the paid-for superfans that the government has done at the expense of poor, mostly black South Africans is atrocious and shameful. And I think this is a good spot to wrap it up, although I'd love to stay out here and chat with you guys longer, but got lots going on. So thank you all so much, and have a lovely day. God bless. Be sure to share this with friends and family. They might want to listen in on it. And thanks a lot. We'll catch you here next time on the program. Don't forget, on Rugby Ascendant, we still have one more broadcast this weekend. Tomorrow on Rugby Ascendant, it's Benetton hosting the Lions. The Bulls had a big win today. I just finished the press conference with Jake White a short while ago, and we'll get that up and posted, and we'll let you know what he had to say about the victory. Thanks a lot, everybody. God bless. Take care of yourselves. Be sure to hit the like button. We do appreciate your patronage, and that's not just an empty statement. You have many options, particularly if you have to pay for your data, or you're dealing with load shedding in South Africa, or you're around the world at an odd hour, and you choose to listen in on this live or watch it after the fact, and I'm very grateful for that. It is really nice. A lot of people appreciate the interest in rugby, and I'm really happy that they do, because I'm also a big fan. And anyway, we'll just leave it there. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good day from East Coast of the United States. This is Chris saying, be safe out there this weekend. God bless, and we'll catch you next time right here on Chris Wyatt Africa. Cheers, everybody.